Good evening, my name is Soham Bhattacharya. Today I will show you how to assemble a computer. Most of you may think that assembling a computer is a very tough job, but it is not so. After watching this video, you can also assemble a new computer.
Before we start assembling a computer, we must keep the items handy. The items are like the processor. In this case, we have chosen the Intel G2010 processor, which sits in the LGA1155 socket. We also need a compatible motherboard, RAM, hard disk, an optical drive. In this case, we have chosen a DVD-ROM, a cabinet which includes the SMPS, the essential input devices like the keyboard and the mouse, and the essential output device as the monitor. We can also add more output devices as we like later on. We also need a screwdriver set. Let's unpack the cabinet. This cabinet has two front panel USB port, front panel audio port, the power and the reset button, and also a DVD chamber in it. The cabinet can be opened by unscrewing these two screws and push the side cover a bit backward. Inside the cabinet, we have found some accessories shipped with it, and of course the SMPS. The SMPS we found on this cabinet is of 450 watt. The accessories which we found in this cabinet are a bunch of screw, a buzzer, a power cable. There is also a cooling fan on the back of the cabinet. We would also found the front panel connectors and the power connectors releasing from the SMPS. Now let's start with the motherboard. In this case, we have selected a Gigabyte H61M S2P motherboard. This motherboard is set on the H61 chipset and supports all Intel processor with LGA1155 socket. And there is also some description on the back of the box. Let's cut open the box. In the box, you will find a pair of SATA cable, the I/O shield, the user manual with the driver DVD in it. Now let's open the motherboard. The motherboard comes in a ESD protection shield. This shield protects the motherboard from electrostatic discharges. We must not throw the ESD protection shield away, at least until we set the motherboard inside the cabinet. Let's have a closer look to the motherboard. There is the ATX power supply, the RAM slots, the processor socket, the PCI Express slot for the graphics card, the PCI slots, the PCI Express 1X slot, the SATA connectors, different panel connector, different panel USB connector, the front panel audio connector, the CMOS battery, the CPU fan power connector, the auxiliary power connector, and on the back panel of the motherboard you will find the PS2 port for keyboard and mouse, the serial connector, the VGA connector for monitor, the parallel connector for printer, 4 USB connectors, onboard Ethernet connector, and onboard sound connectors. Now let's unbox the processor. Inside the box we will find an installation instruction booklet and an Intel logo sticker at the back of the booklet. We will also find a heatsink fan assembly with the pre-applied heatsink compound beneath it. And at last the processor kept inside a protective cover. This processor is to be installed over here. Before installing the processor, we should remove the safety cover from the CPU socket. Here we can see the LGA pins situated on the CPU socket of the motherboard. Now take out the processor from the cover. Look for the notch on the side. These notches will exactly match to the alignment key on the CPU socket. Now set the processor gently on the CPU socket. Don't press it hard. Now close the cover and lock the latch. The processor is successfully installed on the motherboard and needed to install the cooling assembly over it. Align the assembly in such a way that the power connector on the CPU fan can be inserted easily. Now press the locking button on the four corners of the assembly, two at a time, diagonally and simultaneously. Now connect the CPU fan. Please make sure that the wire doesn't hamper the rotation of the fan. Now it is time to install the RAM. Please be sure that the motherboard supports the RAM. Look for the notch in the RAM. There is also a similar alignment key on the RAM slot at the motherboard. Insert the RAM in the slot and press firmly till it click sound occurs. This ensures the perfect insertion of RAM. Now it's time to set the motherboard inside the cabinet. In order to do so, remove the mock I/O shield from the cabinet and install one that is supplied with the motherboard. To install the I/O shield, press it inside out to the back of the cabinet. Now put the motherboard inside the cabinet and align its back panel to the I/O shield and mark the screw holes. There is 6 screw holes for this motherboard. Now take out the motherboard and be sure that the grommets are set to each screw holes. Tighten them to ensure the safety of your motherboard. Now put the motherboard again to its position. Find the motherboard mounting screw which is supplied with the cabinet. These screws are short in height and flat on head. Put this screw to the screw holes and tighten them. But remember not to tighten them too hard. It may harm your motherboard. Now it's time to connect the front panel connectors to the motherboard. Take help from the user manual supplied with the motherboard. Connect the front panel USB connector to the motherboard. Be sure about the key. Also connect the front panel audio connector to the motherboard. Now it's time to install the hard disk. Unpack the hard disk and mount it to the hard disk mounting rack inside the cabinet. Screw it tight with the bay. Let's also install the optical drive to its position. This cabinet has a optical drive cover. So before installing the drive, we must remove the cover from the cabinet. Slide the optical drive to its position and reinstall the cover. Set the optical drive in such a way so that the button in the cover touches the switch on the drive, but not too tight so that it keeps the switch pressed. Now tighten the optical drive using screws. Now it's time to make connections. Take out the power cables from the back of the SMPS. Connect the auxiliary power, main power, the SATA powers to the hard disk and DVD. We also need to connect the data cables, also known as SATA cables, between the motherboard and the external storage devices. We also need to connect the cabinet fan's power cable to the Molex connector. Close the side cover and the machine is ready now. But before we start using the computer, we must also install the basic input and output devices to the machine. Let's open the box of the monitor. The monitor is supplied with a base so that it can stand on a desk. We also need a mouse and a keyboard. The mouse and the keyboard is to be connected to the PS2 ports at the back of the machine. Connect the VGA cable between the machine and the monitor. Also connect the power cables to the machine and the monitor. Press the power button on the CPU and the machine starts. To go inside the BIOS setup, press the delete key before the machine starts booting. And the machine is ready. Just install an operating system and enjoy. Hope you have enjoyed the video. Thank you.